Hello and welcome to Magala Foresight, and this is Mikhail Menasse, producer and host of the show. Many thousands of Ethiopian migrants in Saudi Arabia's COVID detention centers have been suffering for many months under horrible circumstances. As you will see shortly on these mobile phone images sent out by the migrants from inside the detention centers, emaciated men are seen lying shirtless on floors due to the unbearable Arabian heat, hundreds packed into small rooms flooded with raw sewage. Many have described the situation inside these detention centers as hellish. We'll come back after seeing these videos and pictures. We warn you, they are very graphic. The Telegraph published an exclusive investigation into the issue and found out that the Ethiopian government tried to silence its own citizens about the situation in the detention centers. And this is corroborated by others like Al Jazeera Online. Again, let's have a look at this video. Maria Forestier, researcher and advisor for refugees and migrant rights at Amnesty International, is here on Magala Foresight to answer these and related questions. Marie Forestier, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. We will be discussing about the Ethiopian migrants in detention centers in Saudi Arabia. So how did Amnesty International come to learn about Ethiopian migrants in detention centers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
Well, we've been monitoring the movement of migrants through the Horn of Africa and towards the Gulf. Amnesty International has produced several reports about migrants workers in the Gulf, in Qatar, for instance. So we've been monitoring this issue. And then late June, we received messages from Ethiopian people from the diaspora. We also saw reports and videos on social media that were very, very concerning. And that's how we decided to do research on this issue, to corroborate what we were seeing on social media and to understand exactly what was happening in these prisons in Saudi Arabia.
So what did you learn? What did you find out as a result of these investigations?
Well, we found out that Ethiopian migrants are subjected to human rights abuses in Saudi Arabian prisons. A whole range of abuses. First of all, they are detained arbitrarily. There is no official ground for their detention, and they haven't been able to challenge their detention or to appear in front of a court, which is against international law, first of all. Second of all, the conditions in detention don't meet international standards. People are detained in overcrowded cells. On average, they are detained with several hundreds of people, like 350 people approximately, and at maximum 500 people, which is unbearable. They are detained also in some cases in facilities where there is just a bare room, not even a bed, not even toilets. Some detainees told us that they were obliged to use the corner of a room as a toilet space, and that it flew towards the area where they were sleeping, which is grossly inadequate. In addition to that, detainees are not distributed enough food, and they don't have enough access to drinkable water. They just get a piece of bread in the morning, some rice for lunch, and a small piece of bread again in the evening. And they don't have enough drinking water, which is very problematic because, as you can imagine, in Saudi Arabia, in the spring and the summer, it's extremely hot, about 40 degrees in the cells. So they need even more water to drink. Another concern is that detainees don't have access to appropriate health care. They are not able to see a doctor unless emergency cases, and only in some prisons in Jeddah or Mecca. But in the first detention centers where they are detained after crossing the Yemeni border, they don't have access to health care at all. And Amnesty International is especially concerned because women pregnant women and young children are detained in the same conditions. We documented that there are teenagers who are detained alongside adults, and there are also young children from babies, even newborns, to 4-year-old who are detained in these conditions without appropriate hygiene, food, or health care. And there is also a significant number of pregnant women. I was able to speak to 2 pregnant women who told me that they didn't have access to X-ray or appropriate health care, and they were concerned about the health of their babies. So all these conditions violate international law and don't meet appropriate standards to detain people.
So have you tried to reach out to the government of Saudi Arabia and of the government of Ethiopia, and what was the response?
Yes, so we shared our findings with both governments of Saudi Arabia and Ethiopia before releasing our report, in order to engage with them and to try to obtain answers. We didn't receive any communication from them before the release of the report, but we received a letter from the Ethiopian ambassador to the UK, explaining that Ethiopia is committed to repatriating its citizens, that they are looking into the condition of detention in Saudi Arabia in partnership with Saudi Arabian authorities. And we're very satisfied to hear that, because it was one of our main demands to look at these conditions. And then once the conditions are established, there must be improvement of these conditions. And overall, the Ethiopian government explained that it was concerned with the capacity of hosting returnees, including the quarantine time and space, and also the challenge of reintegrating them in their communities. So this seems to be the obstacles for the Ethiopian government to repatriate Ethiopian migrants who are currently detained in Saudi Arabia, which we encourage them to repatriate.
But there are reports that the government also the Ethiopian government tried to silence the migrants and also the Ethiopian community in Saudi Arabia of legal repercussions, to quote exactly, if they post on social media photos and videos of the situation in the detention centers. And this document leaked to the media on 24 June shows that the government knew before even the investigation about the seriousness of the situation in the detention centers. So
Amnesty International was not able to corroborate this call from the Ethiopian government not to share information on social media, but we were able to document that Ethiopian officials are fully aware of the conditions of detention in Saudi Arabia, because some officials from the embassy and from the consulates were able to visit these facilities and have seen with their own eyes the conditions. So you're right, they are aware of it. And that's why we hope that the process of investigating these conditions with Saudi Arabia, as it was announced in the letter we received, would be rather quick, so that concrete measures and concrete improvements can be implemented in order to improve the condition of detention while waiting for repatriation, which is the ultimate goal.
The Telegraph, which reported this in detail, said that it approached the government of Ethiopia, and the response that it got is that they knew only from the investigation about the situation, the conditions in the detention centers. So why, if they knew all along, according to this leaked document, 24 June, at least 2 months before the investigation, why the cover-up?
This I don't know, and it would be a question for the Telegraph or the Ethiopian government. I can only assume that it is embarrassing for any country to know that its own citizens are in such conditions, but I don't know more.
You said you hope for improvements after you contacted the Ethiopian government and got their response. So have you seen improvement since?
We haven't seen improvement since. It's been very recent. It's been just a week. So I expect it to take a little bit more time. What we are happy to see is that since early September, the Ethiopian government has repatriated a few hundreds more detainees. The Ethiopian government announced that they will repatriate 2,000 migrants between early September and early October, which is a positive development, even though it's a small number. And we would very much like to see a plan with a target number for repatriation in the coming months, and not just for this month.
You said the Ethiopian government was saying that there were concerns about space, accommodation, and all that. Is it fair to say that, given the seriousness of the situation of the migrants that you explained before?
I think it's a complicated balance to strike. I think it's a genuine concern and obstacle for the Ethiopian government, this lack of quarantine space to repatriate migrants. And that's why Amnesty International is calling for donor countries and humanitarian agencies to step up their effort to support Ethiopian government so that it can build capacity to increase the quarantine space and the capacity to reintegrate migrants when they return. IOM, the International Organization of Migration, has announced a new funding to support this effort, which is a positive development. And now we hope that this increase of funding will translate into concrete improvement for migrants returning and in the numbers of people returning.
Mr. Abdo Yassin, the Ethiopian Consul General in Jeddah, also accused the migrants detained there in the detention centers of being violent and sometimes trying to escape. There are also some reports that the Ethiopian government accused its citizens of being terrorists. Do you have any information regarding this?
I don't have any information regarding terrorism accusations. What I can tell you is that people I talk to are people who left Ethiopia because they were looking for a job, looking for economic opportunities. One of them told me that he wanted to support his family back in Ethiopia, for instance. So I didn't talk to people who left Ethiopia for political reasons, first. Second, in terms of violence in prison and trying to escape, yes, some detainees I talked to said that there were attempts to escape. It's important to understand that people detained there are totally hopeless. They don't see any end of their detention. They are in like terrible condition, which is a burden for their mental health. We documented cases of people who have attempted to take their own lives because they are so desperate to be in prison. So in this condition, you can understand that people are trying to escape.
So are there casualties, people who died? There are some reports of people who died, including children and women.
So these are different cases. For cases of people who attempted to take their own lives, according to the information we were able to document and corroborate, they didn't die. Their cellmates just stopped them before they died, thankfully. So that's what I can say. Again, that has been corroborated. In terms of cases of death, we documented and corroborated at least 3 cases of people who died in prisons for reasons that we were not able to establish. And in addition to these 3 cases, we heard testimonies of 4 other detainees who saw dead bodies during their detention. So there have been cases of people who died in these prisons. And also I spoke to women who spoke with mothers of babies who died as well because they didn't have enough milk to feed them and not enough water, which illustrates in a very stark way the dire conditions in these detention centers.
How many number of camps, detention centers are we talking about? And what is the total number of detained migrants?
Well, this is actually very difficult to know. Again, based on the research we conducted, we identified 5 detention centers, meaning that I spoke to people who've been detained in these 5 detention centers. And in terms of numbers, well, as you know, the Ethiopian consul in Jeddah said that there were 16,000 migrants in Al Shumaisi Center, which is only one center in Mecca. So if there are 16,000 migrants detained in one center, and since there are several centers, we can assume that the number is definitely higher. So it's probably fair to assume that there are at least 20,000 migrants detained currently in various detention centers in Saudi Arabia.
Given this huge number, do you say that the pace of the repatriation can it be improved? Because people say that there's only one flight of more than 200 people per week, and given the plight of the migrants.
So it's not a few hundreds. As I said, it amounts, like the total is 2,000 in 1 month, which is encouraging, but still relatively small compared to, as you said, the number who is currently detained in Saudi Arabia. I think the problem is not a problem of flight. The problem is the capacity to host them in quarantine facility, when they arrive in Saudi Arabia. And that's why we're calling for partners to support Ethiopia to build up its capacity, because if they can host more people in quarantine space and support them in their reintegration, then they will be able to repatriate more from Saudi Arabia.
I believe you visited these centers and you interviewed people.
Sorry, I haven't visited these centers because Amnesty International doesn't have access to prisons in Saudi Arabia, but I interviewed them through web application.
How many people did you interview, and what is the background of these migrants? Where did they go from?
As I said, I interviewed migrants who came to Saudi Arabia for economic reasons. I talked to 12 people, including 5 women. And among these 5 women, there were 2 pregnant women. So spread out in various detention centers in Saudi Arabia. Some of them had already been in Saudi Arabia and were deported and came again for economic reasons. For others, it was their first attempt to come to Saudi Arabia. So all of them for better work opportunities. And what we know from the research is that people currently, migrants going to Saudi Arabia are coming from all parts of the country. So it's a problem that affects many people. And also every person I spoke to said that they didn't want to stay in Saudi Arabia and wanted to return to Ethiopia.
80%, according to the report I got, are from this region in Ethiopia, from Tigray, and they complained that despite the pleas they were making to the Ethiopian government to repatriate them for months, they were ignored because of their identity. What do you say to that?
Well, the statistic you just mentioned is not in our report, and we were not able to gather this kind of information. Again, people from every region in Ethiopia are currently detained, and this issue of migrating for economic reasons and then being now detained and not able to return affects everyone across Ethiopia.
Once they are repatriated to Ethiopia, I gather there are some people who want to go back. There's the re-migration. So what effort is being done by the international community to reintegrate them in their communities so that this cycle of re-migration is broken?
That's a good question, and that's a difficult question, and that's a challenge. So in order to make sure that people will not be willing to migrate again, efforts should be done on education, on livelihood opportunities, training for better work opportunity. And several organizations are providing funding for this. But this kind of work needs to be developed and increased in order to tackle the root causes of the migration issue.
Many criticized the Ethiopian government, response in the detained migrants in Saudi Arabia. And they say that it's part of the human rights abuses inside the country. Many people are being killed, displaced, arrested, and without due process of law, being detained in prisons, tens of thousands in Ethiopia. So what is Amnesty International's view regarding the handling of human rights in Ethiopia by the Ethiopian government?
Well, Amnesty International has produced a report documenting abuses occurring last June in the protests that took place then. So we've been monitoring and documenting the situation. We are also engaging with the Ethiopian government to encourage it to better respect human rights and not reproduce actions that can lead to human rights abuses, including death or arrests.
Mary Forster, thank you very much for this very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Well, we have come to the end of the interview. Thank you for watching.
What is IGAD today? IGAD is dismantled. Under whose influence and instruction? Under President Isaias of Eritrea. He doesn't recognize the existence of IGAD. He said to Abiy that Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia are the proper horn and that they have to come together. That others would not help them to resolve these problems. So IGAD is not alive. We have the skeleton of IGAD in place. But IGAD was revitalized with the crucial role of Ethiopia, because IGAD is a vehicle for all of the countries of member states of IGAD, of the region, because it caters the collective interest of all of us in security, in development, in politics, in trade, in people to people, and cultural ties, and regional integration. After all, IGAD is a building block of the unity building effort of the African continent. That's what Abiy has done. They all that amount to committing treason. And definitely he will be accountable. He will be accountable for his action. When time will come, definitely. What would an ordinary Kenyan, a politician Kenyan, a businessman Kenyan in public service would say today about the improvement of relations and working together towards integration of the IGAD region? What would Sudan say? What would South Sudan say? What would Djibouti and Somalia say about it? It's illusion. He's entertaining illusion. Truly entertaining illusion. The region is in chaos. The region is in chaos.
You know, Abiy Ahmed sent about 100 commandos to Jubaland to remove Ahmed Islam Madobe, so he could please Abdullah Farmajo. Farmajo is the president of Somalia, because their patriarch, Isaias Afwerki, tells him to support. Farmajo doesn't control Mogadishu. He controls some part of Mogadishu. He lives in Villa Somalia and all these places, which is part of, he probably controls what used to be the base of the marine forces 20-something years ago. Otherwise, he doesn't have control over the rest of Somalia. And there are many parts of Somalia. I wouldn't consider Somaliland part of Somalia now, because it's been independent for the last 30 years. Short of recognition, Somalia has been independent for the last 30 years. So no Somali leader has ever exercised or set foot, so much as set foot in Somaliland. But you have Puntland, at least, they extend a measure of legitimacy to the whole notion of Somalia, and you have Jubaland, you have southwest Somalia, and the central Somalia in Adado, and then in Baidhabo, in all those places, you know. And Abiy sends commandos to remove a regional leader in Kismayo. He doesn't have any freaking clue what implication this kind of stupid move would have in relations between Somalia, the people of Somalia and Ethiopia.
After independence, the state in Eritrea adopted a way which is not democratic. So if you adopt a system which is not democratic, of course you are deciding to a state of affairs which will not be good in our understanding. So Eritrea's problem is mainly related with the state that was formed after independence. They formed a dictatorial regime, and that regime brought much of the havoc on that state.
The results of his 30-year reign is clear. The issue is, the issue is in that area, in that region. The idea that Ethiopia could also replicate what he had done to Eritrea. So I don't really think that pay attention to what President Isaias says. Nobody should pay attention to the legacy of a dictator. In Ethiopia too, there was some level of authoritarian rule over the last 50 years. The promise of the constitution and the promise of a multinational federation was not fulfilled. And the demands of the last 6 years, or the last 5 or 6 years, was that the federation be democratized and the country convert its subjects to citizens. That was what it is. And to allow President Isaias roam around the country and counsel the former prime minister to make Ethiopia Eritrea, I don't think we should even talk about that, because we know what President Isaias is all about. Ask the citizens of Eritrea.
Look to what the situation of today between Eritrea and Ethiopia is. Yes, honeymoon trips are made by Isaias and Abiy, exchanging visits to the capitals. But either free movement of goods, free movement of people, are the borders open? Have we freed the border areas from militarization? Eritrean troops are still on the trenches, 1,000 kilometers border. Ethiopian troops are still there. So what's the difference between the no peace, no war time and now? Now I can see only the honeymoon and love affair between the two leaders. There is nothing coming out to say that Ethiopia and Eritrea are benefiting. There is a dividend of peace. Where? No one can see it. There is no dividend of peace. It's not only sending troops from the federal government or recruits from the federal government and the Amhara region to get trained in Eritrea. A big number of them are being trained in Eritrea. But Eritrean security forces are also inside Ethiopia, intervening in the internal affairs of Ethiopia. Abiy has allowed this for Isaias to rape Ethiopia under the guise of cooperation. And they are not with Eritrean uniforms. They are wearing the Ethiopian uniforms, disguised, not only in Addis, including in other quarters, and to secretly operate, supporting Abiy. And this is very, very dangerous. It compromises the sovereignty of the country. It allows Isaias to have a free hand. This is dangerous. This will create havoc in the region. But the most fascinating thing is Isaias has one group of security cooperating with Abiy, and some even hidden from the official cooperation he has got with Abiy, working under the guise of the embassy and so on and so forth, and trying to do separate activities with other stakeholders. He's working on multi-dimensional front where that is dangerous for the country. The early removal of these actors is the must, because it will complicate rather the whole situation of the country. They may entertain that they are leading a government, a state in Ethiopia today. But definitely sooner or later, they will be accountable to it. What unifies Isaias and Abiy is the issue. I think those who are following the behavioral and conducts of the two leaders, it's easy for them. It doesn't need to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist to know what unified the two. They are deeply in love with themselves. To them, to each of them, they are the state, they are the people, they are the government, they are the army, they are everything. Same is for Abiy, same is for Isaias. And they have created a common enemy, and they say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's why they declared that they have to cleanse the legacy of the PRDF, and in particular that of the Wayane, the TPLF. This is the love affair about. They say they will complete it, cleansing the legacy in 6 months since they launched the honeymoon. They have not achieved it, and they will never achieve it. They will never achieve it. Because the legacy of EPRDF is in the mind of millions, tens of millions of Ethiopian people.
If you remember, sometime like 20 years ago, Eritrea was at war with nearly all countries in the Horn, including Yemen, about 20 some years ago. Mr. Isaias Afwerki is the most reviled politician on the face of the earth. A dictator of the worst kind, that had caused about 500,000 Eritreans flee the country. It's a country that had a promise about 30 years ago that it would become the Singapore of the country. It had that potential. The Eritrean people are hardworking people, industrious people, people who love their liberty and are ready to pay sacrifice. Now, that's Eritrea, and it was in conflict, as I said, with nearly all of the countries of the Horn. His political vision is rejected by Eritreans and by the international community. By adopting the political vision of Isaias Afwerki, Abiy has made himself a laughingstock in the region and internationally. Now, there are a lot of things that we can say, but we don't have time about the politics and geopolitics in the region. But by adopting the vision of Isaias Afwerki, who was in conflict with all of those countries of the Horn, you cannot expect Abiy Ahmed could be a respected person. As a leader of a country, a large country in the Horn of Africa, a source of stability and inspiration for all of the countries in the Horn of Africa, he could have become a historic figure if he knew the limits of power and if he knew how to rein in his ambitions. But because he did not know that, he did not have the capacity and the wherewithal to be able to see the complexities of the country and the Horn politics, he has dismantled all the relationships with the countries of the Horn. He is now seen as a child, an infantile politician in the country. He has made Ethiopia lose its respect in the Horn region. No one, and some of the leaders in the country have already said that in private, at least, that this is not what Ethiopia deserves. Even the small countries in the region who would not dare say anything about Ethiopia in private expressed the view that this is not what Ethiopia deserves. This is not what is an embarrassment to the region. That's the way that he is viewed, and because of him, Ethiopia has lost the luster and the respect that it commands or should command in the Horn of Africa region.
Isaias has been on record, and he wants to get even with TPLF. TPLF stood in the way of Isaias' pharaonic ambitions. It's very unfortunate, Isaias was hoping to become the 21st century pharaoh in the region. He sent expeditionary forces to Congo, to Somalia, and all those places, okay? But this Seta generalarian leader still wants to get even with TPLF. So he stops at nothing, he would stop at nothing to get even with TPLF, to even all the scores with TPLF, all the scores with Tigray. And now he has what Vladimir Ilyich Lenin would call a useful idiot in Abiy Ahmed, and he wants to use Abiy Ahmed and his relations with Abiy Ahmed to get back, to get at us. So he's been on record. I'm not deciphering a code or something. He's been saying it in public, okay? So yes, if there is going to be trade, the trade would emanate from every corner, okay? Tigray has to fend for itself. It will.